Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today we're going to crack open a revision guide on Greek and Roman festivals, focusing mainly on the Great Panathenea. You know, Athens' biggest bash. But it wasn't all togas and partying. As we'll see, these festivals were really vital to ancient life. And hold on tight, because later we're going to even touch on a festival where slaves got to call the shots.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Intrigued.
definitely.
I thought so. So what's really captivating about all this is that festivals weren't just downtime for these ancient folks.
Right.
They were like deeply woven into their religion, their politics, even their social standing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how these festivals were so much more than just, a break from everyday life. They were really at the heart of ancient society, shaping how people interacted with each other, with their gods, and with their city.
Let's unravel that a bit.
Sure.
We're talking rituals, competitions, music. It was like a full-blown cultural explosion.
Yeah, it was a total spectacle, a sensory overload in the best possible way.
So why was the Great Panathenea? Why was this one such a showstopper?
Well, it was all about Athena,
Okay.
the patron goddess of Athens.
Right.
Imagine she was their protector, their source of wisdom.
Uh-huh.
By throwing this massive party every 4 years, they aimed to stay in her good graces,
Okay.
to keep her happy. And that way, they hoped to ensure that Athens continued to thrive,
Right. So it was like a big please don't destroy us party.
pretty much, but with a lot more fanfare and olive oil.
Okay, so they went all out to impress her. What, like, what kind of events did this grand celebration entail?
Imagine, days filled with music, poetry, and athletic contests.
Oh, wow.
The Great Panathenea attracted people from, every corner of the Athenian Empire.
So it was a huge event.
Oh, yeah, massive. It was a chance for people to come together, celebrate their shared identity, and witness some amazing spectacles.
But here's where things get interesting, right? The festival was about more than just religion. It was this really powerful display of Athenian power and culture.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a way for Athens to show off its wealth, its military might, and its cultural achievements.
So what were some of the highlights?
Well, the first 3 days were dedicated to what I like to think of as epic poetry slams. Think Homer's Odyssey set to the tunes of lyres and flutes.
Wow, I can almost hear the ancient music now.
It must have been quite a scene.
And then came the main attraction, right? The athletic competitions.
Exactly. Days 4 and 5 were all about testing the strength and skill of Athenian men. You had your foot races, wrestling, boxing, and even, pancration.
Pancration.
Oh, yeah, pancration.
What's that?
That was this brutal, no-holds-barred mix of wrestling and boxing where almost anything went.
Wow, that's intense.
Oh, yeah. It was not for the faint of heart.
It's kind of hard to reconcile that level of violence, with the ideals of honor and sportsmanship that we often associate with the ancient Greeks.
Right. It's an interesting contrast, isn't it? I mean, we often think of the ancient Greeks as being all about balance and harmony, but pancration really throws a wrench in that image.
Yeah, it does.
But remember, for the ancient Greeks, physical prowess was paramount, especially in a world where warfare was a constant threat.
Yeah, that makes sense. It puts a different spin on their pursuit of athletic excellence.
Yeah.
But of course, we can't forget the ultimate symbol of status in ancient Greece, horses.
Absolutely. Day 6 was all about equestrian events, chariot races, and horseback riding displays. But here's the twist. Winning wasn't solely about the rider's skill. It was also, and perhaps even more so, a reflection of the owner's wealth and status. Owning horses, training them, providing the elaborate chariots, all of that spoke volumes about their standing in society.
But the competition wasn't just on the track. It was a social commentary in itself.
Precisely. It was a way for the elite to display their wealth and influence, to assert their dominance within the social hierarchy.
Wow. So what did winning these prestigious events, what did it get you?
The winners received Panathenaic amphorae filled with sacred olive oil. These weren't just any trophies, they were symbols of Athenian identity and the city's dominance in olive oil production. And the amphorae themselves were often intricately decorated, depicting scenes from the festival or Athenian mythology. This further elevated their value and their symbolic significance.
Makes you wonder if, certain designs or scenes were more coveted than others, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like perhaps indicating a higher level of achievement or social standing.
Yeah, like a status symbol even among winners.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly. But it wasn't all about competition and showing off.
Right.
There was a strong religious element too, right?
Absolutely. The grand procession and sacrifice on days 7 and 8, those were like the climax of the Great Panathenaya.
Oh, wow. The anticipation must have been incredible leading up to those final days. What were those final moments like?
Picture this, a massive parade winding through Athens.
Okay.
Starting from the Dipylon Gate all the way up to the Acropolis, people from all walks of life participated, from young men and women to priests and dignitaries, culminating in the presentation of the peplos, this especially woven robe, to Athena's statue. And to kick off the festivities, they held this all-night celebration and torch race called the Lampadodromia. It symbolized the light of Athena's wisdom illuminating the city.
That visual spectacle must have been breathtaking.
Oh, absolutely. It was a dazzling display of Athenian piety, artistry, and civic pride.
What about the sacrifice? What can you tell us about that?
The sacrifice was, the ultimate act of piety. They would offer a hecatomb.
A hecatomb.
Yeah, a hecatomb, 100 cattle to appease the gods and ensure their favor.
100 cattle. That's a staggering number. What does that tell us about, the scale and importance of this ritual?
It speaks volumes about the level of devotion and the resources they were willing to dedicate to honoring their gods. After the sacrifice, the meat was distributed among the citizens, creating a communal feast that strengthened social bonds. Imagine the sense of community as everyone, regardless of social standing, partook in this shared meal, all thanks to Athena's grace.
What a powerful way to unite people. It really seems like the Great Panathenea, it transcended just a festival. It was an expression of Athenian identity, their religion, their culture, all woven together.
Precisely. And we have a lasting testament to its grandeur in the form of the Panathenaic frieze on the Parthenon. This intricate sculpted frieze depicts the procession, offering us a window into the social roles, the religious beliefs, and the artistic skill of the ancient Athenians.
It's amazing how these ancient artifacts can transport us back in time and connect us to those who came before us. But the Great Panathenea wasn't the only festival on the calendar. What other Greek and Roman celebrations piqued your interest?
Well, let's move from the grand spectacle of the Panathenea to the more intimate setting of the city Dionysia. Speaking of artistic expression, let's move from the grand spectacle of the Panathenea to the more intimate setting of the city Dionysia, another major Athenian festival, but this time dedicated to Dionysus, the god of wine, theater, and let's just say, a good time.
Now that's a god I can get behind. Wine and theater, what's not to love? What made the city Dionysia so special?
Well, while the Panathenea was all about, physical prowess and civic pride, the city Dionysia was a celebration of the arts. It was a platform for intellectual discourse and a showcase for the power of storytelling. Imagine a festival where the main event was a dramatic competition, with playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides vying for top honors with their tragedies, comedies, and satyr plays.
A battle of the playwrights. High stakes indeed. What kind of themes did these plays explore?
They weren't afraid to tackle complex and controversial issues. Imagine plays exploring justice, morality, fate, the human condition, even critiques of those in power. It was a time for Athenians to confront difficult questions, engage in lively debate, and explore the depths of human emotion through the lens of drama.
It's fascinating how they used theater as a tool for social commentary and introspection. Did everyone in Athenian society participate in the city Dionysia, or was it more of an elite event?
That's a great question. While attending the theater required some financial means, the city Dionysia was, in many ways, a festival for the people. The Athenian government actually subsidized ticket prices to ensure that even poorer citizens could attend.
That's amazing. They understood the importance of making theater accessible to all, regardless of social standing. It really speaks volumes about their democratic values and their belief in the power of shared cultural experiences. It makes you wonder what those ancient playwrights would think of our modern entertainment. Speaking of entertainment, those musical competitions at the Panathenea really caught my attention. What can you tell me about the instruments and the music they played?
The music of ancient Greece was far more than just entertainment. It was deeply intertwined with their religious rituals, their social customs, and their cultural identity. Remember the aulos and the kithara we mentioned earlier?
Yes. I'm curious to know more about them. What kind of sound did they produce and what was their significance?
Imagine the aulos as a double reed instrument, like an ancient oboe, producing a high-pitched, almost piercing sound. It was often played in pairs, creating a powerful and evocative sound that would have been used in religious ceremonies and processions.
So a more solemn, ritualistic sound. What about the kithara?
The kithara, on the other hand, was a stringed instrument, similar to a lyre, but larger and with more strings. It was considered a more sophisticated instrument, often played by professional musicians, and its music would have been more melodic and complex, suitable for both entertainment and religious contexts.
A real contrast in style and purpose. It's intriguing how music played such a multifaceted role in ancient Greek culture. Now, let's shift gears back to those intense athletic competitions. The pancration was certainly brutal, but what other events stood out to you?
The stadion, or foot race, was always a crowd favorite. It was the oldest and most prestigious event in the ancient Olympic Games, and it would have been equally thrilling to watch at the Panathenaea. Imagine the tension as the athletes line up, their muscles taut, their eyes fixed on the finish line. The starting signal is given and they explode forward, a blur of motion and determination, each stride a testament to years of training and dedication.
I can almost hear the roar of the crowd as they urge their favorites towards victory. What about the equestrian events? Those must have been quite the spectacle.
Absolutely. Remember, horse ownership was a privilege reserved for the elite. These events were a dazzling display of wealth, horsemanship, and social standing. The chariot races in particular were incredibly dangerous and exciting, with teams of 2 or 4 horses thundering around the hippodrome, chariots careening precariously close to each other, the charioteers struggling for control amidst the dust and the roar of the crowd.
It must have been like a scene from Ben-Hur, a true test of skill and nerve for both the charioteers and the horses. Were there any other equestrian events besides the chariot races?
Yes, the Apobates race was a unique and challenging event. Picture this, a charioteer racing around the track, but instead of just driving the chariot, he had to jump on and off the moving chariot. It required incredible athleticism, agility, and coordination.
That's incredible. It's hard to even imagine attempting something so daring. But it wasn't all just entertainment, right? These competitions were also deeply connected to military training and preparation for war.
You're absolutely right. Remember, ancient Greece was a world of constant warfare. Events like wrestling, boxing, and especially pancration were directly relevant to the skills needed on the battlefield. These competitions were a way for Athenian men to hone their skills, demonstrate their courage and strength, and prepare themselves for the realities of combat.
So these athletes weren't just competing for glory. They were training to defend their city, their families, their way of life. It adds a whole new layer of significance to their victories. What other events highlighted this connection between athletics and warfare?
Remember those tribal contests we mentioned earlier, part of the Panathenaea? These contests weren't just about individual prowess, they were about demonstrating the strength and unity of the Athenian tribes. They included events like Pyrrhic dancing, a war dance performed in full armor, boat races, symbolizing naval power, and mock battles, allowing soldiers to practice their skills and strategies in a controlled environment.
So the festival was a celebration of peace and prosperity, but also a reminder of the ever-present threat of war and the importance of being prepared to defend your city.
Precisely. And if we think about the Panathenaea in the broader context of Athenian history, it makes perfect sense. Athens was a powerful city-state with ambitions of empire, and the festival served as a platform to showcase not only their cultural achievements, but also their military might. It was a way to remind their allies and their enemies of their strength and their determination to defend their interests.
It's a fascinating blend of celebration and military preparedness. Now, I want to circle back to the grand procession and the sacrifice at the Panathenaea. These events seem like the culmination of everything we've been talking about. The religious devotion, the civic pride, the artistic expression, it all converges in those final acts of the festival.
You're absolutely right. The procession and sacrifice were the emotional and spiritual heart of the Panathenaea. Imagine the entire city of Athens coming together to honor their patron goddess. It was a moment of collective unity, a shared experience that transcended social divisions and bound the community together.
The atmosphere must have been electric. Take me back to those final days of the festival. What was it like to be a part of that?
Picture this. The sun sets on the 7th day of the festival. As darkness falls, torches are lit, illuminating the streets of Athens as the city prepares for the grand procession. People from all walks of life gather along the processional route, their anticipation building with every passing moment.
I can practically hear the murmur of excitement rippling through the crowd, a mix of anticipation and reverence. What happens next?
The procession sets off from the Dipylon Gate, one of the main entrances to the city. Leading the way are young men on horseback, their bearing proud, their horses magnificent creatures with braided manes and gleaming coats, and perhaps even adorned with garlands of flowers or ribbons in honor of Athena. They are followed by chariots, each a work of art, elaborately decorated and pulled by powerful teams of horses.
It's a breathtaking spectacle of Athenian power and prestige. Who else was a part of this grand parade?
The procession was a microcosm of Athenian society. There were young women, chosen for their grace and beauty, carrying sacred vessels and offerings for Athena. Musicians filled the air with solemn melodies played on the aulos and the kithara. Priests and dignitaries, in their ceremonial robes, lent an air of religious authority to the procession. And of course, thousands of ordinary Athenian citizens, eager to participate in this grand display of civic pride and religious devotion.
It was a truly inclusive event, a moment when all of Athens came together as one. What was it like as the procession approached the Acropolis, the sacred hilltop home to the Parthenon?
As the procession drew closer to the Acropolis, the energy would have intensified. Remember, the Parthenon was more than just a temple. It was a symbol of Athenian power, wealth, and artistic achievement. And it was dedicated to Athena, the very goddess they were celebrating. The crowds would have swelled, their cheers echoing through the streets, their voices mingling with the music and the rhythmic clatter of hooves on stone.
I can only imagine the sensory overload. The vibrant colors, the intoxicating scents, the cacophony of sound, all converging in this climactic moment. What happened when the procession reached the Acropolis?
The peplos, the specially woven robe for Athena, was brought forth. This robe, a masterpiece of textile art, created by a group of skilled Athenian women, depicted scenes from the myths and legends associated with Athena. It was carefully draped over the statue of Athena that resided inside the Parthenon, the culmination of the procession, a symbolic gesture of honor and devotion.
What an incredible moment, a culmination of artistry, devotion, and civic pride. But the festivities didn't end there, right? The grand procession was just the prelude to the sacrifice.
Exactly. Following the procession, the sacrificial animals, 100 cattle in total, were led to the altar located outside the Parthenon. Imagine the scene, both solemn and chaotic, Priests dressed in their ceremonial robes, preparing the altar and the sacrificial implements, while the animals bellow and stir, sensing their impending fate.
It's a stark reminder that ancient religious practices were often quite different from our own. What happened after the animals were sacrificed?
The meat was meticulously butchered and divided. Portions were burned on the altar as an offering to the gods. The remaining meat was then distributed among the Athenian citizens, creating a massive communal feast. Everyone, regardless of social standing, shared in the bounty of the sacrifice, a powerful symbol of unity and shared experience.
The entire structure of the festival, from the competitions to the procession to the sacrifice and the feast, was carefully orchestrated to reinforce social bonds, strengthen religious devotion, and celebrate Athenian identity.
Exactly. And the fact that the Panathenaea was held every 4 years, attracting people from every corner of the Athenian Empire, only magnified its impact. It was a moment when the Athenian world converged, reaffirming their allegiance to the city and their shared identity.
It sounds like the ultimate expression of Athenian power and unity.
But remember, we've only just scratched the surface of the fascinating world of ancient festivals. We still have other intriguing celebrations to explore, each one offering a unique glimpse into the beliefs, values, and practices of ancient civilizations. Let's delve a bit deeper into those Roman festivals we touched on earlier.
Let's journey back to Rome now and explore those Roman festivals we talked about earlier. The city Dionysia, dedicated to the god of wine and theater. Sounds less about those physical feats and more about creative expression.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. Compared to the Panathenaea with its emphasis on physical prowess, the city Dionysia was a celebration of the arts, a space for intellectual debate, a showcase for the power of storytelling.
Yeah, it's amazing how the ancient Greeks valued storytelling and performance,
Yeah.
As much as we do today.
Absolutely. And remember, theater in ancient Athens, it wasn't just entertainment. It was really interwoven with their democratic ideals and their sense of civic duty. Plays often tackled political themes, social issues, philosophical questions, prompting citizens to think critically, and to engage in this meaningful dialogue about the challenges facing their society.
So it wasn't just an escape. It was a catalyst for reflection and social commentary.
Yeah, exactly.
I imagine those playwrights weren't afraid to push the boundaries and challenge the status quo.
Oh, absolutely not.
Were there any specific plays or playwrights that stand out as particularly influential or controversial?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Think about playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Their works just delved into these really profound themes. Think of justice, morality, fate, the very essence of the human condition. They didn't shy away from questioning authority, criticizing social norms, grappling with these difficult philosophical questions,
Hmm.
and the audience loved it. The City Dionysia was a time for Athenian citizens to just come together, not just to be entertained, but to participate in this shared intellectual and emotional experience, to debate, to laugh, to cry, and ultimately, to learn and grow as a community.
It's incredible how these festivals blended,
Hmm.
entertainment, social commentary, and civic engagement.
Yeah,
It makes you wonder, like, what would Plato think of our modern day festivals?
right.
Would he see them as valuable platforms for discourse and reflection, or would he be critical of their evolution?
That's a fascinating thought. I mean, perhaps he would be intrigued by the sheer diversity of our celebrations today,
Yeah.
The way we kind of weave those ancient traditions with these modern influences. Or maybe he'd lament the commercialization of some festivals,
Right.
that shift away from their original religious and civic purposes.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that festivals, like all aspects of culture, are constantly evolving,
Right.
reflecting the changing values and beliefs of society. But let's shift gears now to that other Roman festival we were talking about,
Okay.
the Lupercalia,
Okay.
the one with, the goatskin whips and fertility rituals.
Ah, yes, Lupercalia. Definitely one of the more, let's say, unconventional celebrations we've encountered on our journey.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine it being seen as a positive thing.
Yeah.
Did everyone in Roman society really embrace this ritual? Were there any dissenting voices, any concerns about its more, shall we say, intense aspects?
That's a great question. I mean, while we don't have a lot of detailed accounts of, individual Romans' opinions on the matter, it's probably safe to assume that not everyone would have embraced the ritual, with equal enthusiasm. Some might have found it exhilarating, like a deeply spiritual experience. Others might have just participated out of social obligation or, a sense of tradition,
All right.
perhaps with a mix of apprehension and excitement.
It's a good reminder that even within, a single society, perspectives on tradition and ritual can vary widely. But let's move on to a Roman festival that might resonate a bit more with our modern sensibilities. Saturnalia.
Ah, yes, Saturnalia.
Hmm.
This festival was all about letting loose, indulging in excess, and really turning the social order on its head.
Okay.
And it's even believed to have influenced some of our modern-day Christmas traditions.
Now this is a festival I can get behind. Tell me more about this Roman version of a holiday party.
Well, imagine this. For an entire week in December, the Romans would celebrate Saturn, the god of agriculture, time, and, well, let's just say liberation. It was a time for feasting, gambling, gift-giving, and just general revelry. Work and business were put on hold, schools were closed, even the Roman Senate took a break from its usual political wrangling. People decorated their homes with greenery, exchanged gifts, and held these elaborate feasts.
Sounds a bit like our modern day Christmas break, with a dash of New Year's Eve thrown in.
Right.
What really stands out to me is this idea of turning the social order upside down. Slaves were given a taste of freedom, dining with their masters, gambling freely, even giving their masters orders. Was this truly a time of equality, or was it more symbolic?
It was a complex interplay of symbolism, social release, and perhaps a hint of anxiety. For a brief period, the usual power dynamics were suspended, offering a glimpse into an alternative social reality.
Hmm.
While it's tempting to view this as a genuine expression of egalitarianism, it's important to remember that this temporary inversion of roles ultimately served to reinforce that existing social hierarchy.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Yeah.
A controlled chaos that allowed for a brief release of social pressure while ultimately reaffirming the status quo.
Exactly.
What about the gift giving? What kinds of gifts did they exchange during Saturnalia?
The gifts exchanged during Saturnalia were often pretty simple, homemade items, candles, dolls, poems, small tokens of affection and appreciation.
Okay.
And this tradition of exchanging gifts, even if they were modest, it echoes through the centuries.
Right.
It reminds us of that enduring human desire to express generosity and goodwill during times of celebration.
It's incredible to think that even in ancient times, people found joy in giving and receiving gifts during the holiday season.
Yeah.
As we wrap up our exploration of these ancient festivals, what key takeaways would you like our listeners to ponder?
As you move through your modern world, just consider this. What are the echoes of these ancient celebrations in our own lives?
Hmm.
What roles do festivals play in our modern societies? Do they fulfill similar, social, religious, cultural functions, or have they transformed into something entirely different?
It's a fascinating question. Do our modern festivals offer the same opportunities for
Yeah.
connection, reflection, and communal celebration?
Yeah.
Or have they evolved into something entirely new?
I encourage you, our listeners, to reflect on these questions. Think about the festivals that you celebrate, the traditions that you hold dear, and the ways you connect with your community. Perhaps you'll find some surprising links between ancient rituals and your own modern celebrations.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to create new traditions, to forge new bonds, and to find new ways to celebrate the human spirit. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of ancient festivals. But the exploration doesn't end here. Keep learning, keep discovering, and keep diving deep into this fascinating world of history and culture.
And remember, there's always more to unearth, more connections to make, and more insights to be gained.
Until next time, keep diving deep.